Welcome to my channel. Today, we'll explore the aggressive and tricky Grob attack in chess, which can quickly catch opponents off guard and lead to victory if executed correctly. I'll show you essential moves, concepts, and how to counter it. Let's dive into the exciting world of the Grob attack without further ado. The Grob attack starts with g4, d5. Then, the bishop is fianchettoed to g2, which puts pressure on the d5 pawn and eventually on the b7 square. White plans to sacrifice the g-pawn in order to launch an attack on the queen side. Now, black has several moves to choose from. They can play pawn to c6, to which you can respond by playing pawn to h3. This position is roughly equal, perhaps slightly better for black. Let's go back. Next on the list is a more typical and common move, bishop takes g4, accepting the gambit. Then you play pawn to c4, attacking d5 pawn and opening the h1a8 diagonal for further attacks on the b7 square. Now black has a variety of possible moves to play. If they play pawn captures c4, then you play bishop takes b7. Knight to d7, bishop takes the rook, queen takes the bishop, attacking the rook. You simply respond with a pawn to f3. Then they play pawn to e5, using the fact that you can't capture the bishop due to the loss of the rook. You play queen to a4, attacking the pawn, and they respond bishop to e6, reinforcing the pawn. In this position, black has compensation for the sacrificed exchange, but the game is even, with equal chances for both sides. Another option they can choose is to play the pawn to d4. The sequence of moves is the same as in previous variation, but here black plays pawn to d3, marking the Romford counter gambit. The idea is to try to destroy white's pawn structure and weaken the white king. In this position, black has enough compensation for sacrificed exchange too, but white can reach an even game. For example, after the move knight to c3, there are no serious threats from black. Returning to the previous position, the next option is knight to f6. Pawn captures d5, knight captures d5, and queen to b3, both attacking the knight and b7 pawn. Here black can't play pawn to e6 due to the queen check on a4, which would result in the loss of their bishop. Instead, they will likely play pawn to c6. You respond with queen captures b7, after which they play knight to d7. You can't take the c6 pawn here due to the rook on c8 attacking the queen and potentially leading to the loss of the c1 bishop. Instead, you can play knight to c3. After the move rook to b8, you can safely take the c6 pawn. If black plays knight to b4, you can retreat your queen to a4 to protect the c2 square. Going back to the earlier position, here black also can play pawn to c6. You can then trade pieces on d5 and play queen to b3, attacking the b7 and d5 pawns. After knight to f6, the following position can occur: queen to b7, knight to d7, knight to c3, pawn to e6. With correct play, white can equalize and sharpen this position. For example, after pawn to d4, bishop to d6, queen to a6, queen to c7 and bishop to d2. However, here black needs to be careful, because after a frivolous and greedy bishop captures h2, they can fastly lose. After knight to b5, queen to b8, bishop to b4, knight to b6, rook captures h2, queen captures h2. And here white can play queen to b7, putting black in a very dangerous position around their king. Returning to the earlier position, if black plays e6 here, as previously stated, they will lose their bishop after queen to a4 check. Another option here is to play queen to c7. Then you can play knight to c3 and they will respond with knight to c6. Knight captures d5, queen to d7. This leads to a good position for both sides. Going back to the earlier position, the most common move here is pawn to e6. And after queen to b3, black has three possible moves. The first option is to play knight to f6, which leads to a position similar to the one shown before with the knight on f6. Here you play pawn captures d5. Black can't play knight captures d5 due to the queen to a4 check. Instead, they play pawn captures d5. Knight to c3, pawn to c6, queen to b7, knight to d7, queen takes c6 pawn, and after rook to c8, the queen retreats to a4 square. Another option is to play queen to c8 here, however this puts black at slight risk. You play pawn captures d5 and they respond with pawn to c6, increasing the defense on the queen side. On the other hand, the seemingly innocent move of a pawn taking d5 can cause a huge disaster. After bishop captures d5, it attacks the b7 square and f7 square simultaneously. Here you have to play h3. If black plays bishop to h5, then you trade pieces on e6, and now black has several weaknesses which will become the object of attack. The second option for black is to play bishop to f5, in order to keep protecting the e6 pawn. You can respond with knight to c3, and then they can play pawn captures d5. At first glance, it looks like black has fully protected the d5 pawn, but as you can see, the b7 square is quite weak, as is the black king. In fact, the move white must play here is knight captures d5. Black can't capture it with a pawn due to the two weaknesses mentioned before that become obvious after white takes the pawn with a bishop. Therefore, they will probably play bishop to e6 instead. Then, the following variation can occur: queen to a4, pawn to b5, queen to c2, knight to a6, knight to f6 check, knight captures f6 and queen to c6 check. At this point, the position is nearly equal, but black has to play accurately in order not to lose. Therefore, the fourth move, queen to c8 by black, isn't that bad, but it could be risky if black makes inaccurate moves. Returning to the previous position, black can play pawn to c6, which marks the third possible move. This position is similar to those discussed earlier, where the c6 pawn was played. After exchanging pawns on d5, you play queen captures b7 and then they respond with knight to d7, to which you play knight to c3. Once again, white has plans to attack the queen side, but with accurate play from black the position should be close to equality. That's it for today's video on the Grob attack and its variations in chess. I hope you enjoyed learning about this aggressive and tricky opening and how to use it to your advantage. Remember to practice these moves and strategies to improve your chess skills and dominate your opponents. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more chess-related content. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.